Okay, let's dive into some polarizing quarterbacks because yesterday was a great day for one polarizing quarterback and a really pretty terrible day for a couple other ones. Now, I wouldn't necessarily include this guy as a polarizing quarterback. I'm just going to tip my hat to him in Russell Wilson. He's just a star. I think he's the clear second best quarterback in the NFL. DK Metcalf and him they kind of have a special connection. Tyler Lockett's still a baller. Carson's a baller. And Russell just is a magician. I think I know for me personally, he's one of my favorite athletes to watch in my life. When Russell Wilson's on television, I enjoy watching him. And I would pay to watch him play. I've paid to watch him play before. I've seen him play 3 or 4 times in person, and he never doesn't live up to the hype. He's just a baller. And you add Jamal Adams to that team. Like, one thing I think Seattle lacked last year when they added Clowney, like, Clowney's not a huge, like, uplifter. He's not like an energy guy, you know? He's just this freak talent that's kind of an underachiever who just looks great getting off the bus, and depending on if he's into the game or not, like, you're getting his best effort. Jamal Adams, if he's in a good environment, which he was in LSU and now he is in Seattle, is an uplifter. The guy's an ass kicker. And you put him in that environment in Seattle with Russ cooking, like, they're going to be pretty good. And Jamal Adams is going to compete to be the defensive player of the year if he can stay healthy, because he's going to be on a winning team. He's going to be an impactful player. They're going to score points on offense. And Seattle, I just wanted to mention them, even though I wouldn't consider Russell Wilson polarizing. But I think Aaron Rodgers, who I said on a previous podcast, either last week I think last week, I said a big reason Aaron Rodgers, now one, he learned from Favre how much shit you take when, you're kind of an asshole to the younger guy. Like, in pro sports, you don't get to pick and choose where you go, right? You get drafted. This isn't, you're not like, trying to work in the tech sector and be like, do I want to work at Google? Do I want to work at Facebook? Or do I want to work at Apple? That's not how it works. You don't get to pick your employee. They pick you. Like, Aaron Rodgers was forced to go to Green Bay, right? He wanted to go to the Niners, the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and he tumbles and he goes to Favre, then Favre's not nice to him. Well, I understand why Favre wasn't nice to him, because it was probably pretty clear pretty early on that Rodgers was going to take his job. And then Rodgers turned into one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever saw. So really, you could argue Favre, well, he had his own issues, and I'm a Brett Favre guy, but the way that situation happened was probably really just all on Brett Favre. Now, Rodgers, he's pretty prickly or whatever, but it's a tough spot for a young guy. And the opposite this year, we've seen all the information come out of Green Bay. One, Jordan Love's not any good. He was in street clothes yesterday on the bench. Can't even dress for the game. Couldn't beat out Tim Boyle, a guy I've never even heard of. I literally follow football for a living. Played at Eastern Kentucky. I don't know anything about the guy. Couldn't beat him out. And from all accounts, and just some videos I've seen on NFL Network of Love practicing, I don't think it was close. Like, the guy, if he was an undrafted free agent, he probably would have been cut. It's the one great part about sucking when you're a first-round pick. You're on scholarship. And so Rodgers immediately goes, well, I can get credit here, be nice to a guy that couldn't hold my jock right now. It was an easy one. And I'm not trying to diminish Rodgers being nice to the guy, but if Jordan Love showed up and looked like Peyton Manning, would they have a normal relationship? I don't know. But here's clearly what it did, is we already know that Rodgers takes a lot of things personally. And listen, I do too. I think a lot of people listening, I'm sure. I mean, we're all humans. It had to motivate the guy a little bit. And then I think there's a natural progression in this offense where you see it with Kyle Shanahan and Matt Ryan in the second year had a big explosion. We've seen guys in Jared Goff, second year with Sean McVay, big explosion. Jimmy Garoppolo, hard to tell, like last year, took a big jump in the second half of the season. That it gets a lot easier to play in once you kind of master it. Because from all accounts, listening to the Shanahans and the McVays, those guys talk, it is a complicated offense for quarterbacks. It can be uncomfortable with turning your back to the line of scrimmage because you're under center, the zone, play action stuff. Matt Ryan says he didn't feel comfortable at all that first year, turning his back to the line of scrimmage. And Rodgers, did something a certain way under McCarthy, and then it changed dramatically under Matt LaFleur. Another big question with Rodgers is, is he old? Because my always issue with him was his fundamentals aren't great. He just, as you get older, the reason Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Breeze, these guys hang their hat on fundamentals. Footwork, stepping into throws, because your arm strength, even if you throw 100 miles an hour, is going to come down to 95 as you age. And if you throw like 92 like Phillip Rivers, in your prime, you're going to end up throwing 87. Well, you can still get guys out in the big leagues throwing 87. You just better be able to locate. And last year, watching Aaron Rodgers, like, God, he's not as accurate. I know the numbers were good, but he was off. Yesterday, listen, say what you want about Minnesota's defensive backs, all these young guys, dudes with no experience. I don't give a shit if he's playing a college team. Rodgers looked elite. Like, he was making plays that looked like MVP 2014 Aaron Rodgers. That was a clinic. That was a major FU to the league, FU to team management, because it's not, the media's not making this up. The management literally just drafted a quarterback in the first round. And Rodgers looked pissed off for greatness yesterday. That's what Ray Lewis told the Stanford Cardinal one time before an NIT Final Four. They brought him in the locker room, and he told him, you got to be pissed off for greatness. And that's what Rodgers looked like. And he just looked, in general, like, I'm going to eviscerate people this year. And Devontae's a star. And they have some other guys that I think we're all, and even Packer fans would say, Scantling, Lazard, like, we'll see. This isn't Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson or, Greg Jennings. But maybe the great quarterbacks, they elevate, right? I didn't know who the hell Julian Edelman was when he first showed up to the New England Patriots. 10 years later, he's had walk-off touchdowns and great years for, right? Tom Brady, you could argue, kind of made him. And that's what great quarterbacks do. Like, Devontae would have been good no matter where he goes. But these other guys, peak Rodgers makes these guys look better. The Rodgers I saw yesterday, you're going to win a lot of games. If he's got 10 more of those in the bag of the next 15, like, this team's a lock to go to the playoffs because they're going to run the ball. And if you just have a quarterback playing at an elite level in the NFL when he's a Hall of Fame level guy, it's going to be hard to beat you. It just is. Rodgers is just a winner. I mean, the resume speaks for itself. I think our question was, is he falling off the map? Well, yesterday, it looked more like 5 years ago than it did last year. And then the two polarizing guys. Let's start with Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz is a special talent, right? Like Dak Prescott. I like Dak Prescott. I don't think he's a special talent, right? He's a good athlete, average arm. When he's on, he's accurate. Like, Carson Wentz is a freak. But I think sometimes he struggles with touch, and he struggles with not always throwing fastballs. And listen, I understand they had a ton of injuries, have a lot of guys out. Like Jimmy G, I'll get into it in a little bit. When you're missing top receivers or you're missing top offensive linemen, it's challenging. But there's a reason when a team cuts you a check for $25 million a year, $30 million a year, they're putting on you to overcome it. Like, at the end of the day, LeBron is a max player, Kevin Durant's a max player, because he's winning with whoever he plays with. Like, Aaron Rodgers, when he's on, could play with me or you, and he's going to compete to beat anybody. Russell Wilson could play with nobodies and win. Mahomes, people ask me this all the time, like, what if you put Mahomes on the Jaguars? Be like, they'd fucking win? I mean, they would win 10 games? I mean, they'd be awesome. Why? Because he's an elite player. He's an uplifter. And I think sometimes Wentz did this at the end of last year, but the Wentz yesterday just made some awful mistakes. I mean, the pick at the end of the half, pick early in the second half, it just leads to points. And you give, especially early in the season, we don't really know, like, bad teams. Like, at the end of the day, Washington might win 6 or 7 games, right? But right now, week one, they don't look at themselves when they get ready for the game on Sunday morning any differently than the Eagles look at themselves. I think we're going to go win this football game. You know what? Why? It's just, that's what any football team thinks early in a season. Because you look at your record, you're like, well, we're 0-0, right? Or we're 1-0, or we're 1-1. It's one thing. You start thinking you're a loser if you're 2-10, but that's months away. So your margin for error as a quarterback, like, you got to be on point. And just his mistakes. But I think sometimes everything's got to be so like strong and so hard. It's like, bro, you got to be calm. Like, you watch Rodgers and Russell and Mahomes, they can throw the dart, right? They can hit the deep ball. But they also have no problem throwing a little wheel route, throwing an on-time little route over the middle that takes a change up to throw. I think that's the biggest thing Wentz has to work on, to not be so powerful with everything. To be a great quarterback, you could argue you actually don't need the great arm, you just need the accurate arm. But touch is so big with a quarterback. And I think when Wentz gets off, and that was a terrible loss for the Eagles. I mean, being up huge against Washington, who I don't think many of us expect to be good, though I think it's fair to say their coach and even Jack Del Rio I saw in Oakland, like they will be tough. They will be physical. They're not going to just tap out. And I think just Wentz made some inexcusable plays. And Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, had one of his worst games as a 49er. He was inaccurate. Now his top 2 receivers were out. But like I said, you pay him $25 million, there are going to be games and moments where you have to overcome it. You're paying what I think is playing the worst defensive coordinator in the league, Vance Joseph. There are going to be plays to bait, and you have to hit guys. And I'm not just talking about wide open guys, which he missed. I'm talking about when a running back is in the flat, not throwing it behind him. So he has to catch the ball and basically stop running, and then he gets tackled because he couldn't hit the ball in stride. Like, being an accurate quarterback, there's a reason Drew Brees is going to walk right to the Hall of Fame. He's not tall, he can't run, and he doesn't have a strong arm. But every ball, for the most part, is in the majority of his career, right, is pinpoint accuracy. You watch Russell Wilson when he's on, it's just hitting guys in stride. When you're throwing balls behind guys or getting guys over the middle and you're throwing it at their hip as they're running full speed, it's hard to make these plays. Even in the NFL, it's easy to be like, if you touch it, clutch it. Well, if I run a 4.4 40 and I'm hauling ass and I got a corner right behind me and I got to reach back, even if I do catch it, I'm immediately going to get tackled because I have to slow down. And at the end of the day, a coach, when it comes to the quarterback, like if I'm Kyle Shanahan or I'm Doug Peterson, I scheme these guys open. Well, if my guard gets smoked and my quarterback can't just complete basic, out routes or in routes, stuff intermediate in, I got problems. And then when the big plays are there to be hit, I got to hit them. And Jimmy Garoppolo underthrew a ball. And I think, and I see this sometimes with Derek Carr, when you get a guy wide open, I think sometimes quarterbacks who aren't the elite guys are so terrified to miss him with a strike that they throw like this lollipop, this lob pass. Well, the problem with a lob pass when it's underthrown, it's the one ball that a DB that's 10 yards behind the wide receiver can catch up to and make a play on the ball. If anything, I can live with overthrowing a guy, especially if my wide receiver has a little room to kind of jump or run back and make a play. I hate underthrown balls on wide open guys. I despise it because you have so much room behind him. It's the only place the DB can make a play. And Jimmy Garoppolo had Kendrick Bourne wide open in the end zone, and he underthrew him, and Patrick Peterson made a play on the ball, and that was basically the game. And he was just bad. I mean, there's no way around it. We'll get into Kyler Murray probably a little bit later, but Jimmy Garoppolo and Carson Wentz second half, it was just bad football for guys that make like a combined $55 million. It's just, I heard Doug Peterson say it. He's probably a little more candid than Kyle on it. I mean, I'll use the same word. It's just unacceptable. It's one thing to lose and get beat, and you can miss a throw. But when you consistently miss throws in the second half, it's one thing, early in a game not to have a rhythm. I get it. But once you're a pro and you're a veteran player, once you get in the flow of a game and you've been in the same offense, it's why I give Tom Brady a little leeway. Never run this offense. They're kind of like, they're trying to mix all this stuff together. Carson Wentz and Jimmy Garoppolo, even Dak Prescott, like they got some new terminology. I'm sure McCarthy's doing some stuff. Jimmy Garoppolo and Carson Wentz have been talking the same verbiage for years with their head coaches. So once you get in the rhythm of especially the second half, you're sweating, you're coming out of the halftime, you're loosened up. Like my expectations for these guys are just higher. It's not good enough. And it wasn't. Got them both beat. What's up, everybody? My name is John Middlekauff, and I host a show for Colin Cowherd called 3 and Out on his podcast network. You can subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. I worked in the NFL as a scout for Andy Reid and Howie Roseman, and I've been talking about football for the last 7 years. If you like your football talk, raw and unfiltered, no BS, I'm your guy. Subscribe to 3 and Out right now.